China's 300 to 400 million middle class are far richer than anyone realizes, including a massive off-the-books cash economy. It's very much, from history, a normal structure of the society. Meet Professor Wang Xiaoli and Credit Suisse. According to their 2010 survey and report, which they just updated recently, by the way, they just issued a new one about a week ago, which I haven't gotten a chance to see yet. Incomes are 2 to 3 times officially reported. Disposable income is 90% higher than official data. I will note that in his conclusions and the work that he did, he's spent a lot of time talking about how much money is in the hands of the wealthy, though. And he doesn't go that deeply into how much is in the hands of the lower and middle class. Nevertheless, he's still saying the rather obvious piece of information that we want to know. Incomes are 2 to 3 times higher than reported. The funny thing about it is, every time I share this information with a Chinese person, they all just look at me and go, I don't want to buy your book. Yeah, it's just, to them, it's just, yeah, right, we already know this. Consistently. So official statistics are far less meaningful. The $3,500 a year average annual income, the housing affordability ratio of 40 to 1, the Gini coefficient of 0.474, they simply don't tell the real story. This is fairly fresh in my presentation. It's not even in the book. That's how fresh it is. And I think it's amazing, and I'm going to add it. The book will be published in North America by Sino Media International, a traditional publisher. I'm very excited about that, in about 6 months. So I've got time to still do some additional editing. From 2010 to 2011 to 2012. Well, first of all, total household deposits. Key word here is household, not commercial. Total household deposits, 40.6 trillion RMB. That's as of 2012. Okay. Again, see, that's not what I noticed. What I noticed was up 16.7% from the previous year. Now, first of all, I translate divide by 6, so 40 trillion is 7 trillion, about 7 trillion US dollars. What's 16% of 7 trillion US dollars? $1 trillion. So, and it happened from 2010 to 2011. Household deposits increased in China by $1 trillion. From 2011 to 2012, they increased by another $1 trillion. We're now into 2013. I can't say I know, but I'm assuming from 2012 down to 2013, they're going to increase by another $1 trillion. So in 3 years, household deposits in China have gone up $3 trillion. Total US household deposits is $3 trillion. You see? So we've got quite an incredible and staggering situation. Non-financial enterprises and business deposits, an additional 32.7 trillion, up 7.9% for your reference. Even the poor farmers have $500 billion that nobody knows about. Is it true? Well, there's 800 million farmers across China, about. Now, I'm thinking the 80-20 rule. I'm thinking Chinese people and other people from other countries are entrepreneurial, like to make a little extra money on the side, and that the 80-20 rule applies. So in other words, I believe that 20% of farmers, besides the farming money that they get, which is very little, they have plenty of food, but they have very little income, about $10,000 a year. They're out there on the side, wheeling and dealing, selling and buying bricks and making wood cabinets and doing stuff to make money on the side. The guy that was a woodworker who made me some beautiful cabinets for my condo in Sanya 4 years ago, charged me 2,000 or 3,000 RMB, made me these beautiful, custom-made solid wood cabinets. That wasn't his main business. I think he was a farmer, so making money on the side. So if the 80-20 rule applies, then if there's 100 million out of the 800 million farmers out there making an extra 30,000 RMB a year on the side, which again is cash on the side, that's $500 billion. That's $500 billion that nobody's talking about. But is there real world evidence, Mario, you would ask? Have you gone out to the farm country? My wife and I lived in Hainan Island for 3 years. We moved there for the first year of our marriage to sabbatical, take a break from Shanghai. I wanted to get to know my wife in the first year of our marriage, and that's why, and that was my thinking for why I wanted to move there with her. So we lived on the beach in Sanya. It got boring very quickly, by the way. She ended up working in a very nice position for Mandarin Oriental hotel that opened up down there. So we ended up staying for 3 years. I bought a motorcycle, not a scooter, a motorcycle. One of those big looking Harley Davidson jobs with a small engine. I'm amazed we're not dead, by the way. Because we used to go out every weekend. We used to drive up to Wujishan. Hainan is a beautiful tropical rainforest island, like any other tropical rainforest island. Beautiful. So we used to go out into the country. So we'd go off-road, onto the dirt farm roads. And we go out into the middle of nowhere, and what do we find? All the farmers building themselves houses. You see what I mean? Now, we all understand, who've been here for a while, they were building those houses themselves, and that they were building them at a cost of probably about 500 RMB a square meter, because just the cost of the bricks and the materials. But nevertheless, they were building themselves 3-story villas out there in the middle of nowhere. They got the money from somewhere. They didn't get it from the farm. That's for sure. You see, so we saw the evidence. And then the dirt roads that we went along for, because this was over 3 years. The dirt roads that we went along, they all ended up getting paved over. So then they were paved when we went back 6 months later. And this was just that one exposure that we got to the farm country in China. Okay. Do you see a China street family dinner? Sure. And the immediate thinking is, these are low-income people living on the street with their tiny little shop, and that's what we know. But what I immediately notice is the other thing. How much food is on the table? Look at how much food is on the table. It's fantastic. You know, while Westerners are back home and, I don't know, eating Weight Watchers and fast food and do you know what I'm saying? But this is a table that's just covered with fresh food. I'm not saying it's expensive, but it's abundant in a different way. Okay? Okay. So I don't know that they're that poor. Where does some of this come from? Traditional Chinese culture driven by Confucian ideals and the influence of the Mao era. Chinese are not boastful. They're humble. They are private and self-protective. If you know anything about the history, we know why. Families were encouraged to spy on each other back in the Mao day. So everyone kept quiet. And then it was, Martin. 4 of us, we stick together, we take care of each other. Anybody else? You don't know, they're a stranger. You don't trust them. So that was our watch, to protect, to be private. The only people who knew what was going on in my life was Martin. See what I mean? That's where Chinese Guanxi came from. Self-protective. In addition to being not boastful about what you have, driven by Confucian ideas. So again, from a behavioral and principle point of view, values in a society to understand. Now I know we know the latest generation is out there spending. It's a different world. We know that. The story of the shoddy-looking gentleman with the tattered nylon bag is one of the 7 stories from the book, the chapter called The 7 Stories. And there's 6 other stories. And then there's a number of speaking of examples. So in total, there's probably about 25 examples. And I've represented to myself, as I've looked at those, that I'm saying to you that those 7 stories, and speaking of examples, another dozen or so, are a fair and reasonable representative sample of 100 million middle-class Chinese people out of the total. So again, I'm trying to apply that 80-20 rule. Of the rising 300 to 400 million, the elite entrepreneurial ones who are shaking and baking and wheeling and dealing is about 100 million of the total of them. And they have $100,000 in the bank. Most of it that they earned off the books. Okay. If that's true, simple math says 100 million times 100,000 is 10 trillion US dollars. Now the thing is that many of you in this room, and I'm looking at a couple of people right now who say, oh, Mario, actually, I know people like the ones you're describing who have a heck of a lot more than $100,000. They got 3, 4, 5 million RMB in the bank. And you look at them and you have no imagination that this could possibly be the case. So it's a dialogue. I can't say that 100,000 number is an average. I don't know how to pick a better number. It could be lower. And we could be sitting here and saying, well, you don't know, it's actually probably more about 5 or 6 trillion in this off-the-books economy. Or it could be higher, maybe it's 12 or 15. We can't ever really know. So you see, I did use that sense of deductive reasoning on evidence to try to come up with and to try and more clearly quantify this for everyone. We are in uncharted territory globally, which is why I say we go to the beach. Everybody knows what you do. What do you do at the beach? You make a sand pile, right? Everybody knows what happens when you make a sand pile at the beach. You pile up the sand, and as you're piling up the sand, what happens? The sand falls back down. Well, physicists and Professor Peerbach thought that was a fascinating way to study randomness, to try and find predictability and a pattern in something. In other words, as you're pushing the sand up and then it's falling down, what's the pattern of how the sand falls down? So he made a big pile of sand that was stable, and then he had his lab people working with him put 1 grain of sand on top at a time until it reached the breaking point, and then the sand would finally, suddenly, break its state and tumble down. And he had all that hooked up to the computers to measure the pattern and the predictability and the formula. And you know what he came up with? Nothing. Nothing. No pattern. Completely random. Never could find anything that resembled a pattern. And I like that because Joshua Ramos uses this as an example in his book, The Age of the Unthinkable, talking about the global economy, how it's fused together, the banking system, the internet, the technology, all of the developments, which have placed us in an unthinkable age to where we look to the economists and they don't have any idea what's going to happen. They don't know. We're in a random place. A subprime mortgage banking problem in the United States with a bank, and 1 million people in Guangdong lost their jobs. Oops. You see? Random things that we can't predict what's going to happen in the future. To a degree, that's where we are in today's world. So, advice or ideas. Have a realistic China view, where it's really at, not just all that surface talk and media kind of mainstream headlines. Think and live globally. I don't think anybody here needs any encouragement on that regard. In that regard, it's just wonderful to think and live globally. People who don't leave their country, you're missing out. So I know most everybody here agrees with that. 50% of S&P earnings are international. Now that's S&P 500 United States companies. So you can't even just look at the United States economy and the United States stock market. 50% of their earnings are international, most of it coming from Asia. So there's an interlink of we all sink or swim together, right? The world economy is deeply fused and the experts don't know. In the meantime, on the Fortune Global 500 list, 95 Chinese companies, second only to the United States with 132, And I got a funny feeling everybody in this room knows that whether it's in 5 years or 10 years or a little bit longer, that number is going to reverse. Right? It's going to happen. In summary, China was historically a cash society. It still is today. There's $10 trillion of cash. What's bad about it? The next thing on the list. Needless to say, if it's a cash situation, it makes corruption really easy. Now, with that thought in mind, and all that it means, we know that as China is modernizing and trying to enter the international real world as a partner, that it is cracking down more and more and more and more on corruption. Any person here, any Chinese person here, any of you, even not Chinese, would say it's harder and harder for a company, for a person to do stuff that's off the books. But there's new rules, new laws, hiding fapiao, this and that. It's getting harder and harder. Now, let's think about what that means. Now, I want to think about that it's a very serious trend. That means that all this off-the-books money, because of the new rules and laws, is being migrated into the on-the-books economy. See what I mean? So the money that was before uncounted, in a way, is now being counted in GDP. That is like the fuel. That explains the fuel of how it is we're seeing in the real numbers China grow. Because this off-the-books cash, which if it's 10 trillion, is incredible, is feeding into and migrating into the on-the-books economy. Very interesting point and very, very interesting trend. It's quiet, hidden support in the society, in the economy. It helps explain a lot of things in that regard. And to that degree, I think we should be glad. With the U.S. weak in its way, and with Europe weak in its way, we need strength to come from somewhere. So if China went weak, all of us, it would be spinning out of control. You'd be cutting your budgets, and I wouldn't be doing the work that I was doing for you. You know what I mean? It would be bad for all of us. So in this respect, let's be glad that this exists, in that sense, though it causes other problems and issues, which are hopefully going to be addressed more and more in the future. And again, it fits Chinese ideals. Now, you have to meet him. He had his birthday 2 days ago, 2 years old. He's a firecracker, let me tell you. He's a wonderful joy. He's a firecracker. My son Vincent. I say this to you because I am not thinking about us here today only. I'm thinking about my future 30 years from now. No, not enough. I'll be gone. I'm thinking about his future. So I'm really trying to think 100 years down the line, 50, 60, 80 years down the line, why all of this, why understanding here may be helpful to all of us. I'm here in China. Let me do it this way. I'm here in China, and I came from the United States. But my ancestors, they came from Italy. They left Italy because they had to. They did a very tough thing, and they went to the America. Right? They went to America. And for whatever reason, and I'm very happy about it, 14 years ago, I was the first Cavolo who left America and moved over. He came this far all the way around to China. And the Cavolo son, Vincent, is the first Cavolo born out of the United States in generations. I feel happy about that. I feel warm about that. In light of that history, thinking not just like Wall Street, quarterly reports, or even just our own lives for the next year or 5 years or 20 years, but the future. This is what can meaningfully drive us all to say, you know what, we really need to understand what's going on in the world today. And I hope this evening's talk has gone a long way to helping you understand much better the good and the bad and the misunderstood of China.